Andy joins us via Skype. Andy, it's so good to see you. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Dana.
So before we get started, I just want to check on your security because I was reading with some alarm that you actually had to leave Portland due to the threats that you were receiving from Antifa. Of course, the same people that when we spoke with you last before your book came out, they were protesting bookstores for even so much as daring to stock your book. Now it's out. It looks like the tension, the threats have escalated. Hopefully you're okay. Tell me what's going on with that situation.
Well, Dana, you know well what it's like to receive threats of violence. For me, it's been ongoing ever since they beat me, they referring to Antifa in 2019. And all these threats and visits to my home to intimidate myself and my family have been reported to the local law enforcement and, when applicable, the FBI, but nothing was ever done. So I have really been on borrowed time, and I think just seeing them recently in December when they wrote things like "Murder Andy Ngo" and then wrote my address on the wall inside one of their autonomous zones, that was a point where I could no longer stay there.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's because, I mean, they apparently do follow through this, as we just saw with the hotel in Olympia, Washington. And the violent riots still continue. The damage still continues. The threats still continue. But yet it receives little to no national media coverage at all whatsoever. Yet we have essentially a standing army in Washington, D.C. right now. Give me your thoughts on that, because that seems to be like they're in the wrong place.
They are in the wrong place. They were on the wrong place on inauguration day too, because that's in Portland and Seattle is where Antifa rioted. And I'm really glad you opened up talking about what happened in Olympia, which is the capital of Washington State. I mean, just think about this. A mob of armed militants, armed with, according to witnesses, knives, hatchets, batons, actually took over a hotel in downtown Olympia, which is actually not too far from where the Capitol building is, where the governor is. They took it over, and there were 40 rooms that were occupied by clients at that time, and they had to shelter in place. And police had to get a SWAT team to get these extremists out. This is like something you would hear about happening in Somalia. I think it should have been front page news. It should have been news around the world, but very few people have even heard about it.
No, not very many people have at all. And one of the reasons I think that anyone, as we've discussed, we're speaking with Andy Ngo, who's also editor at large of the Post Millennial. His new book is out, Unmasked: Inside Antifa's Radical Plan to Destroy Democracy, out today. One of the reasons that anyone even knows what's been going on is because of the video coverage that you have provided, and that's really for those who might not be aware, which I can't imagine anybody would be. That's the reason why there's so much hostility from Antifa towards you, because, and I have to say, you haven't approached it with any kind of editorial, no bias or anything like that. You're simply capturing footage of what is transpiring before the camera in a public area. And that's what everyone has been seeing. And as a result, you've been targeted. Has any other person in media, who's been covering Antifa, have they been targeted in the same manner that you have? Or is it because, are you getting the bulk of it because it seems that your videos are really resonating and really getting a lot of traction around the country?
Antifa, in addition to assaulting me, have attacked and beaten other independent journalists and live streamers, and even those who work in legacy media at the local level. So other people have been victimized. I think their threats of violence has particularly escalated against me just because I am I have a large platform. You know, I have a book coming out. They tried to ban this book because they're afraid of what's inside it. And Unmasked, I think what's crucial for readers to know is that it doesn't just go into the history and what Antifa have been doing, particularly last year, but it actually publishes for the first time some primary documents that were leaked to me from somebody who went through the membership process for one of the Antifa organizations in Portland. And readers will see that there's an intense indoctrination process that introduces prospective members to really extremist literature, pamphlets, booklets. There are secret meetings. It's structured like a curriculum. They get radical preachers essentially to come in to lecture to them, and then they get weapons trainings how to fight. So this is a homegrown domestic terroristic insurgency movement, ideology, whatever you want to call it, I don't care. And they're having the cover of the mainstream press, who still continuously tell us day after day, and not just the mainstream press, but mainstream Democrats, that these are anti-fascists opposing the threat of white supremacy.
Yes, there were some Democrats who said they were just an idea, which I would imagine those who have been victimized physically would take issue with. They weren't victimized by an idea. We're speaking with Andy Ngo. You bring up a really good point in that they get covered by the press, and that strikes me as odd because any time that anyone has criticized the press previously, whether it was the former president, whether it was anyone that perhaps is opposite to them ideologically, there were calls of protecting the sanctity of the press, protecting the free press, and how press freedoms are so important. But I have not seen any objections like that applied to you or the case of anyone else, Andy, that has been there documenting what's going on with Antifa.
Yeah, it's quite sad. So initially, when I was reporting some of these threats and assaults against me to the US Press Freedom Tracker, I used to hear back, and then the threats against me by Antifa were so numerous that they just stopped responding. I don't even know if they even track it. So all the legacy journalists' rights organizations have not treated me as one of their own. And I think it's because all the media institutions, and I mean, not just media, but academia, government, entertainment, is completely saturated by liberals and leftists who have sympathies with what Antifa are doing. And I think this is the big danger in the success of Antifa, is that not only are they having success in actually at times seizing territory, such as in Chaz, but they're having fellow travelers who work in really powerful places that disseminate information to the world, who are giving cover to them, to the point of where everybody knows about what happened on the 6th of January in the Capitol Hill, and people even know the names and backgrounds of all these suspects who have been involved in that. But nobody cares to look into who these Antifa actually are, who the people who are going out and setting fires to buildings that are being occupied by people inside, bringing explosives to riots, bringing guns, bringing knives, attacking and actually killing people. And in the case of in Portland, for example, the Oregon Health Authority, which was the government agency tasked with dispersing federal COVID relief money, they actually gave $145,000 of public taxpayer money to one of the Antifa groups that had recently applied for nonprofit status. So we're, in some cases, even literally funding our own demise by a network of organizations that have it stated explicitly that they want to abolish the United States by any means necessary.
Wow. That's something I did not know. That is unbelievable. The taxpayer dollars now being diverted towards some of these groups. Andy Ngo, the book is Unmasked, Inside Antifa's Radical Plan to Destroy Democracy. Go and get it. It is out today. Andy, congrats on the book, but more importantly, thank you for your dedicated pursuit of truth, because without it, I don't know where a lot of Americans would be. This is an incredibly important story, so we're grateful for your work. Thank you so much for your time today.